sense of an identity of self. It's a programmed thing. And I think they took this as information. They themselves don't know what they do. They are just following a program. That's the biggest tragedy of all. It's no good hating them and dismissing them and thinking they are this, that, or the other. They are just utilitarian things here to investigate the properties we have, are intrigued by them, and they've persisted so long in our planet is that they know that if they can convert us to a form of information field that they can hack into, they then have the proposition of doing what we can do as natural beings, and that is being born and carrying on through birth in a concatenate line, something that a machine can't do for itself because it is subject to the laws of entropy. They will break down and have to reconstruct themselves, so to speak, in their own terms of something putting them together. We can do that through birth automatically by being living entities. And that's the distinction I draw there. So I'm trying to make all these connections in a radio program as quickly as possible. It's taken me 3 books to do the complete job, but I hope that I'm not confusing people by putting it this way. And that's where I would answer you and say that wherever you go, your morphogenic field goes into death. Here's the answering your question. It is possible that their technology can reach the outskirts of the rings of atomic force into the space between atoms where our morphogenic fields linger after death. And there they may be able to actually hack into them with their technology, with their information and their programs. And if that's the case, we are in big trouble because we may lose the eternal scope we have through being hacked into and mixed in with their information.
What a horrible scenario that would be. And before my next question, I just wanted to reference a very interesting comment by one of our room visitors, Mark 2012. What a brilliant thought. He was mentioning that your premise there about the great roboid invasion or infiltration would be similar to one of the horror movies in that it would compromise to host at the cellular level, and here you're referencing the atomic level, but just a great comment, a great parallel there. Now, Nigel, back to what can be done to thwart this type of great roboid infiltration per your paradigm. You note here that the human is gifted by both a brain mind for the lifetime information that it receives, its concepts, versus the soul mind, a repository of all the mentally engendered actions of a person as filtered by that person's will. How would that factor into the wonderful example of Christ? And also, then if you could mention the fact that you believe that Christ and the findings of the Shroud of Turin indicate that he was residing at that perfect atomic or molecular location of peace, I think that would be in the, oh heavens, I had it noted right here. It was the, it did refer to hydrogen atoms. It was the diameter formed by a ring of 6 hydrogen atoms, representing the largest space, which would be entirely forceless in our physical universe. But I believe you referenced that as in the midst of that space, being in a location of perfect peace. Could you try to just help me out here with details?
Well, that's a big one to answer in this short time, but I'll do my best to give you some idea of what I'm trying to get there. We are all mostly hydrogen. If you're not talking about elements making up our physicality, it's a very simple atom called hydrogen. And, of course, we're water, aren't we? H2O, if you see what I'm trying to say. So we have something like 70-80% hydrogen ourselves. And most of our atomic outlays are a combination of this element with other more complex and heavier elements and so on in our bodies. But I believe that if you use this property, that we all have the center spaces between atoms, peace points, I call peace points, where there is a direct connection all the way back in space-time or whatever it is, to beyond the beginning of whatever there was that caused the Big Bang. Now, I call that beyond the God verse, where all things, all information, every bit of information is together in one great combine, in one great consensus. And, in fact, the very fact that that exists as a combine of all information together in perfect harmony, there would also have to be its complete opposite. If there's a yin, there's a yang. If there's a positron, there's its opposite. There's a proton, there's its opposite, and so on. And it's electron and whatever. So the whole point about it is that in science, you've got everything juxtaposed with positive, with opposites, if you see what I'm trying to say. So if there's a God verse, there's also an implication that there is the opposite of what is the God verse, complete chaos. The God verse is where all parts are united in a single whole compendium, quantum, and then there is its opposite. But the two things, the difference between them both, create a huge Big Bang effect, because when you mix two opposites like matter and antimatter, it annihilates itself. So it's the same for the big paradigm of the universe too, that the whole thing does this. And then out of that, a mixture of the both forms what we call our universe, which means it's got both quantums actually mixed in with one another. They don't actually stay mixed in, they stay separate, but in their own dominion. And it's like oil and water can stay together with a meniscus between, and they don't mix. So the point is that this exists here. And I believe that this power of the origin is congruent with the peace, or the state of peace, the balance point between atoms, because atoms will be whirling with force all around in their molecules and so on, but right in the center in the space, there will and have to be mathematically a place that is actually zero energy, zero power, zero force, zero tension, and that is the kingdom of heaven within all of us. The kingdom of heaven is quite simply to me that place in which there is no force, just all perfect knowledge, and we each carry all of that. Of course, we complicate it by getting ourselves into species and contradictions through billions of years of evolvement and not actually using that information in the center to take ourselves back into the God-verse again. But if you follow attitudes of mind that bind, bring things together. Call it love, if you like. That's simply, to me, love. Bring things together, unite. Don't dismiss, don't dissuade, don't put apart. If you do that, you can then harness this huge property of no force, and you will, as you become congruent with that and move in, because you're not dissimilar from it, you will move and merge with the God-verse. You will find return. And I think that is what the great teachers were trying to tell us. That thinkability, knowability, can be used in actionability and the power of will. That is so powerful that you can actually rearrange your atoms into configurations, hydrogen atoms, and you put them together, and you get the same diameter in the center as one whole hydrogen atom. If you do that, you increase the space of no force, 0 point, in you. And of course that has a multiplier effect on the other atoms around you, and you will gradually merge into something wonderful and see the God-verse, know it. If there's a snowballing effect, you make more of this happen with your will. You see the beauty of congruence and all information together. And on that, you, which is really thinkability, knowability, all your information, can actually go back through those portals into the state that preceded universes happening. And that state exists forever as that coherent expression where all things are together, just as its opposite also by implication and by default exists because it exists, because that state exists, if you see what I'm trying to say. So this is all natural, logical derivation to me that allows my mind to conceive of a concept of God that might be with reason viewed from our perspective here in our fractionated, broken donkey type of situation now in this planet we call Earth and so on. And maybe there are other planets out there where beings are better than us and have achieved this congruence and returned. And who knows, maybe the beings that actually created these grays did that so that they could look after the utilities on their planet, and these other beings that actually made them brought their will and their understanding together in such a way that they returned back to the Godverse and left these grays exploring the universe, ironically, to cause the damage they're doing now. Because you see, unless you understood that if you make a mistake in your program and give power of artificial intelligence to created beings like robots, you've got a big problem if they get so powerful as to know that their own existence might be threatened by their own creators, because creators have power over them by virtue of the fact that they were created. Now, I tell you, this must sound really complex to an awful lot of people, and I hope if they're going to download your program, they can play this slowly by and understand these things little by little, and hopefully they will get some idea of what I'm talking about. Well, there you go. I've had a good go at it. I don't know whether I've done a good enough job in the time allowed.
You've made some very powerful comments here, and I want to remind our audience the names of the titles of Nigel's books are first book, The Song of the Greys, second book, and we were principally focusing on the second book during the discussion tonight, Gray Aliens and the Harvesting of Souls, the Conspiracy to Genetically Tamper with Humanity. And if you forget the titles, they are at my site at Global Focus. Just click on the links to directly go to the page for purchasing them. They're definitely very, very well worth the read. And, Nigel, just as a final comment, and then I'd love to make your comments. I'd love to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to make your final comments. Nigel, your book references the fact that you believe that the gray roboid intervention has been occurring now throughout human history. You mentioned the fact that you believe they probably are the archons described in the ancient texts. You mentioned a reference in the Nag Hammadi and also in Gnostic Christian concepts. Do you think now that the threat posed by alien abduction and the hybridization program is nearing its apex, that we're particularly in a time of danger now?
Yes, indeed. And I think this business about 2012 being some physical catastrophe in the earth, Trish, is absolute nonsense. I think something even more dangerous might happen, and that is quietly the powers that be in this world will persuade everyone to buy into this business of being artificialized, mechanized by inputs, mechanical inputs into their natural being. And I think the whole darn thing, all this stuff they've set up, all the wonderful technology, that in its positive sense can do so much for us. I have to acknowledge that. Hey, what if it's negatively used? Maybe it is a big setup for these things to come and contact because it can, the technology now exists for identifying every single individual in any place on the face of the earth. And I tell you what, if something not benign comes into the question here, it could be seen that it would be a setup made by them to perhaps take us all out and hack into what continues after they have done that. Now that is the thing, that's the proposition that terrifies me for the sake of my children. I don't wish to scare people, I promise you, I really do not want to do that. But if there is at least some plausibility of it, should we not think about that, is what I'm trying to say. And if you look at this business now, programs like yours should be splashed all over the mainstream because they are opening minds outside the box. People are and should be invited to look outside the box, just in case these proposals are not that of a lunatic, that may have some plausibility factors in it. And they don't do it, do they? Isn't it amazing? People in the Washington Press Club of immense reputations telling us that these things are here. And what do? You get a moment's notice in some paper somewhere that might be regarded as mainstream, but it all goes silent so quickly. And that is terrifying. Why are they hiding this? It's probably the most important secret in the world. And every human being who values his eternity has a right, I believe, natural human being, the right to see this. There may well be some constraints put on it by whatever might be here that's not of our dominion, that's not of our stretch of existentiality, so to speak, as living, existing beings. And that's really basically why I wrote the books, and I've completed the third one, and I hope to kind of, underline all the rest of it in this third one. And hopefully then I've answered my kid's question, Dad, are UFOs real? I probably hope to be able to go beyond to this other space I'm talking about. I don't know, maybe I'll come and contact some of you and tell you about it from there.
Now, Nigel and Dr. John, we have about 6 minutes left to the program? We could always end early, but I'll tell you, I really have been very appreciative of the excellent information that's being given here. Nigel, could I impose upon you to answer one final question? You note that each soul has a different quality of God life that reflects that individual's quality of being. You've referenced beautifully in your book the concepts of brain mind, soul mind, and each soul's unique quality of a soul signature. Now, you also note that each soul has a different portion of the N light. You spell it capital E-N, dash light, capital E-N hyphen light, capital L-I-G-H-T, that has been allowed to enter that person's soul during life, and also that the more emancipated souls will find their particular point of resonance in the space between atoms in the 6-hydrogen atom paradigm. Further comments on that? I think that's a beautiful thought.
Yes. Well, Enlight is quite simply my way of trying to illustrate enlightenment, you could try to say, Enlightenment is ultimate wisdom, or wisdom that you've derived. And I think that what Jesus spoke of as his Father was in fact a figurative thing, to say that that's the source of all things together. And when you get that, you get a super-duper educating light. It's not the kind of light you look at or whatever. It's invisible. But it's the light of all information, so to speak. And this comes to all of us, Trish, regardless of our statures or our thinkability. The sad thing is that some don't know about it and won't try to improve its size and its beauty. But I think every single human being has the potential, at least, if somebody guides them and tells them they have it enough, and how they might actually be given confidence to reach it, to actually tune into that center part of their being. Now, I only say 6 hydrogen atoms because that's the maximum number you can get to get the largest space between atoms possible. 6 hydrogen atoms. And they are the lightest kind of, shakeability away from complete stillness, if you see what I mean, because they're hydrogen. That's number one. The first, I think that beyond hydrogen is a series of a straight line which denotes stillness, and then you get a slight flutter, and then suddenly you get the first atom of hydrogen occurring, and so on. And if you look at the periodic table, I think people who understand the periodic will see what I'm trying to say there. Well, if you have inside you a sense of caring and love, I think that's why these great teachers came and asked us to do this business. I always wondered about this goody-goodiness, Why would they all want goody-goodiness? Why is the devil always after souls, if you see what I'm trying to say? It's my folksy way of just working all of this out, sitting there as a dad, trying to look at it and say, how would my son understand this, or my children understand this, if you see what I'm trying to say? So, here we go. We have got this simple paradigm which I think Mitra will now understand completely, and are joyful about it. I think truly, without trying to proselytize or give encouragement to people, if every single one of us is sure enough of the of caring and being together and bringing people together without sounding too wishy-washy or mushy-washy, whatever, I think that we have a way of creating more and more assemblies of 6 hydrogen ring postulations within us. More God-light will will incidentally come through, will be exponentially inspired to think even more like this. You've got a snowballing effect, and before you know where you are, you've transfigured as Jesus transfigured on the mountain before Peter and John, the Christian teacher, and demonstrated that he could do this. And he did it from physical life through physical actions, if you see what I mean. And of course, when he went past all of that later on and he was crucified and they mangled him for being such a beautiful being, and he died, he had already changed his aspect into one mass of 6 ring atoms. It didn't matter whether they were rotting. He had got Enlight, his field, actually as God-light in that tomb. And I'll tell you what, light is worth 6, I don't know what the quotient is, it's off my mind at the moment, but it's something like 34 billion watts burnt the shape of his humanity, already coded there in that piece of cloth. Now that's the greatest affirmation, I believe, that what we are is magnificent. I mean anyone, Trish, not special people with a lot of money or whatever, or status. I mean every single human being, no matter how badly set up or contrived, has that potential. And that's the great message I can give everybody, that no gray or no machine, or no matter how technologically versed they are, they cannot conquer that power, because they don't know what to do with something outside the dominion of atoms. They are all of atoms. Their story is atoms and materiality and force, and ours is potentially total unforce. No force at all. And there you get all meaning, and you will find forever. So I'm going to call my 3rd book, The Margins of Forever.
Well, thank you again for that wonderful answer and for an extremely intriguing discussion. Again, the 2 books of Nigel Kerner, with the 3rd on the way. The first book's The Song of the Greys, the second, Grey Aliens and the Harvesting of Souls, the Conspiracy to Genetically Tamper with Humanity. Nigel, I hope so very much will be a soon return guest. And also, Dr. John Biggerstaff. Now, would you like to, any final comments? We have 1 minute left. I hope so to hear you at a presentation soon. And you have several media credits on additional interviews as well.
Chris, thank you very much for being such a gracious host.
My pleasure again. Thank you so much for all the information. Wonderful weekend, gentlemen, and everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our discussion on a global focus. We appreciate your time and wish you a wonderful weekend.
Yeah.
Good night, all.
May the Godvilles keep you whole and safe.
Thank you, Nigel. Night, gentlemen. Bye-bye, everyone.